Hey guys, it's Ann Brennan, and it is Wednesday, and we're coming up on the end of the month, which is amazing to me that it's already almost the end of June. I wanted to thank you guys all for tuning in and remind you that we're live today on YouTube, we're live on Facebook, and we're live on Twitter. Twitter is where I spend a lot of my time, but YouTube is where I need a lot of help. We don't have a lot of subscribers over there, and I need at least 1,000 over there before I can start doing big things with that account. So please do go over and subscribe there if you have a chance. Also, you can catch this as a podcast. So if you're listening right now and you want to subscribe there, you can subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. We pull the audio out after the conversation and we put it up there. And again, ASMMcampus.com. If you're just getting started in digital marketing, ASMM Campus is a great place to go to learn what you don't know about digital marketing. And I have to tell you, I'm so afraid to tell you this, but there's a lot you don't know about digital marketing. So we have a whole bunch of courses over there you can take. Some of them are free, some of them are paid. None of them are expensive. They're really designed for people who are just starting out as solopreneurs. All right, I want to talk today with Damion Lupo. Damion, hold on. I'm going to pull you onto the screen. There you go. So
hey,
you're the host of Financial Underdogs. I saw that, honestly, just as I was creating the banners. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Financial Underdogs is a podcast that basically it's where we talk about the raw truth about the numbers and about the reality of money. We just we're not told the truth about money, from the printing that goes on that's really confusing with the federal government, to just what we're supposed to do with our money, investing it, or how we run a business. But mostly it's the investing piece and being financially free. That's the entire mission of the podcast and the company that I run, is to break 1 million people's financial shackles. And Financial Underdogs is about giving people the truth, because quite frankly, we're not going to get the truth on mainstream media, Squawk Box or CNBC or the Wall Street Journal. It's really set up by a system to keep people trapped inside of things like mutual funds. And that's really not going to ever give somebody freedom. So we talk about the real raw truth in numbers and give people sometimes some jarring information, but it's really about something that's pretty raw.
So you seem really passionate. This is your passion then.
Yeah, it really made me mad when I saw both my parents retire, and they retired broke. They played by the rules, and I just said, something's wrong with this system. And something's wrong when most Americans have less than $400, meaning they couldn't deal with the $400 problem. And most 60-year-olds, if the average 60-year-old has less than $60,000 in a 401k or for retirement, something's wrong with our system in the most prosperous nation in history. And people are ending up basically broke and struggling and with shackles on. So it made me mad enough to focus my life and my energy and build a team and an organization around breaking these shackles.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. It's funny because I have 3 kids and I started them all very young investing, and people are so surprised that with my children and what they've done. So I've got 2. One is, well, actually, they've both graduated. My 2 older ones have both graduated from college. And they both have money in the bank for buying houses. They can do that. They have invested enough money. And they have it in different places. So people are always surprised to learn that about my children. So
it's a way. There is a process, and it's called doing the right thing and being on the right path. And you can wake up at 20 years old and realize if you have parents like you that have done something like that. And quite frankly, it's not complicated if you're willing to do the work, and it doesn't have to be painful. It just has to be methodical.
Yes. Well, and talk about it, right? I think that's the thing that really surprises my friends, is that my kids talk about money. It's something we've talked about in our house. It's something they talk about. It's something they really think about very carefully. So it is important. And I'm glad you've opened that conversation. I think it's important. So I asked you for talking points, and the first one you mentioned was learning from old great people. I think that was your exact word, the mentor. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, here's the deal. There's so many things that we don't know. And so how do you even go about doing anything without just tripping over yourself? Well, the reality is you're going to trip over yourself. The question is, do you survive the process? And most people won't take a step forward because they're afraid of a mistake. A mentor is giving you guidance into the unknown, into the darkness. And as you can see, I'm very bald. And I just call that war scars. It's being out in the real world, doing things. And one of the mistakes that when I look back, if I said, okay, 20-year younger Damion, what's the advice? The advice is to keep somebody bald or grayer around that can see into your future because they've been through it. And there's an intelligence, an innate intelligence, kind of an emotional, spiritual intelligence when you've gone through something. It's not something you get in a book. It's why mentors and masterminds are so valuable. And a mentor that's 20 years down the road has something called wisdom. There's the prince, the king, and the wizard theory that we go through these phases. And you need somebody who's kind of a wizard. And the point of the wizard is that they have wisdom. They've been through things. Whereas a prince is just about me, and the king is about power, and that's what I was doing for about a decade. It was just about money and power. And I lost track of reality because I just thought I was the smartest person on the planet. And when I realized I wasn't 10 feet tall and bulletproof, I lost $20 million, and it was a harsh reality. That's where the baldness, I think, came from. It was just going through that process. And we have to have those people because we're not smart enough to know everything. I mean, nobody
Right.
does.
Well, so I'm going to ask you a question that you didn't plan for, but I'm going to ask you anyway. I had a conversation with a dad the other day I think his son's 21 years old, and he says he hasn't gotten to the point where he knows that he doesn't know everything. And we both asked ourselves, how old were we when that happened? So for me, I think I was in my 30s. How old were you when you realized, oh my God, I know nothing?
Yeah, it's funny because as you get older, you realize you know less, and it's like, wait, don't I know more? I've been through more, and you realize there's just more and more that's out there, and information is changing faster. It's growing exponentially faster than we can learn it. I would say after I lost the 20 million, when I had to start over, when I was negative 5 million, and I bring those numbers up because I was a walking, talking balance sheet. My self-worth and net worth are all tied together. So who I was my money. And when it went negative, I went, okay, wait, maybe I don't know some of these things. And so now, and this is, I was probably 32 when I finally realized this after I left the location called Denial.
Right.
It's not a river, it's a place, it's a mindset. And I spent some time working on myself, pretty harsh work. The hardest work we'll ever do is on ourselves. And when I did that for about 2 years with help, with a mentor, with a therapist, I realized, okay, wait a second, there is so much I don't know, and I need to surround myself with very, very smart people. And so now I only work with A people. I only work with self-responsible people. I don't work with amateurs, and I don't work with victims. And it keeps pushing me. And that way I'm at least, not going to be in a place of complete idiocy where I think I know better. I'm actually around people that do know.
Right. Well, I want to talk about, and I hope you don't mind that I move things around a little bit, but you talked about the brand promise, and I wanted to say something about this, and you're going to talk specifically about the brand promise, but you just mentioned that, and it occurred to me that you said, I'm not going to work with this person, I'm not going to work with that, I'm only going to work with the A types, right? And I think that's an important thing to know. Somebody said to me, if you're looking for your target audience, start with who is not your target audience. And I literally just had this happen yesterday. We had a person who has been begging me for, since the beginning of COVID to work with them. And I have turned them down over and over. And then they called not even a week ago, and they said, hey, I'll pay you twice your normal rate. And I thought, fine, I'll do it. And 3 days later, yesterday, I said to him, that was a mistake. I'm so sorry. I can't work with you. And I called my COO, I called Anastasia. I said, I can't, I'm so sorry. And she, she's in charge of the money. And she says, well, that was the right decision. I was like, yeah, thank you. So sometimes that is the right decision, right? Who you're going to work with.
I would honestly say that it's always the right decision to choose, and not based on the money. To be really harsh, we tend to be whores to money, most of us, and and people go, oh my gosh, did you just say I'm a whore? Yeah, I've been a whore too, where I'm out there and it's like I'm pimping myself out for cash. And if cash is your driver, then you're a whore. The question is, are you working with the right people? Are you doing the right thing? Are you valuing your values, or are you just chasing the dollar? And I was really good at chasing the dollar, so I know what it's like to be a whore for the money. And it's no way to live. And you made the right decision. And we always make the right decision if we start with the values, who we are, and there's an alignment with who we're working with. If we violate that, it's hell on earth. It's terrible.
Right. No, it was funny because as soon as I said it, as soon as he said, I'll pay you twice. And I was like, God, do I turn that down in the middle of COVID? And then yesterday I was like, yeah, I really do. It just, and he couldn't believe it when I told him. He just was, he was livid. And the words that came out of his mouth next were exactly why I shouldn't have been working with him in the first place. So, all right. So tell me why the brand promise is where we start.
Well, first off, it defines who you are, the experience that people are going to have being around you. And then there's got to be a consistency. When you think about the biggest brands in the world, all they are really is a promise. And it's a promise of certain things. When you go to Walmart, the promise is cheap and lots of stuff. When you go to a Ritz-Carlton, it's exclusive, it's pampering, like, without question what's going to happen. If you don't have that for your brand, you don't really represent anything. So the question is, what do you want people to experience? And then you have to live it. It has to be consistent. We have 3 rules. We have 3 rules for the company. It's a brand promise. And the promise is we're going to do the best we can. We're going to do the right thing 100% of the time. And we're going to show people we care all the time. And I had to fire somebody a couple of weeks ago because he broke all 3 of those rules in 3 seconds. And it was actually a very easy thing. And he was a friend of mine. It wasn't just some person that I'd hired. It was literally a friend of years. And I got on the phone with him a few hours later and I said, I'm sorry, I wish you hadn't done that, what you've done. And it was because internally is as important as externally. Whatever your brand promise is to your team, your culture, has to start there. If you're not willing to uphold that promise to the people inside, then there's no way that they're going to represent that externally. So you really have to, and then so that starts even before that with you as a culture, as a leader. It has to be consistent, because if it's not consistent, there's no integrity. And if there's no integrity, nobody trusts you. And so if you don't have trust, you don't have anything.
Yeah, I totally. So we use different words, but what we say in our group is, when somebody comes to me, we're like, we want to talk about your brand, but before we do that, what are your core values? Right? Same thing. What are your core values? What is really important to you? For me, it's my husband's like, that is like the last thing I would have ever chosen. But my number one core value is authenticity. I'm absolutely 100% real with you. So if you come in and I'm in a cranky mood and you say, hey, Ann, how are you? I'll say, oh God, cranky as all get out today. I'm completely honest with you every step of the way. And it helps people to know. So yesterday when I let this guy go, I said, this is why, this is exactly why. I just need you to understand, right? And then my second is gratitude. And those 2 things run through everything we do. So it is similar. It's our brand promise. But I was thinking it goes back to what you said about the hard work you did, right? You said you did hard work.
Yep.
Yeah. So go ahead and expand on that, because I think I know what you're going to say, but go ahead and expand on that.
Well, the first thing that most people ask, especially with investing or business, they say, what should I sell or what should I invest in? And I look at them and I go, I have no idea other than you. And people go, wait, what do you mean? And I go, the most important thing is to get clear on you. And like when I went through my meltdown, when I lost all everything, this money, and I say everything because at the time that was everything. Now it's just money. The question I really got clear on was what the truth was. And that was because I spent hours every week with somebody, getting feedback and accountability around diving into that, and then living that, unpacking the layers beneath us, what's really driving us. It takes a lot of time and effort, and it's quite painful. So most people don't want to do it. And the reality is you're going to be on a merry-go-round. It's going to be like Groundhog Day your whole life if you don't do that work. And one of the things that people ask now, they say, where are the opportunities going to be with this whole pandemic and with the investing world or business? And I go, it doesn't matter what the opportunities are, because in 6 months, if I showed you something where you could make $1 million or let's say $10 million in a month, if you don't do the work on you, you won't be ready. It'll be a lottery ticket event that you get into and you get out of, or you get knocked off of, because you're not physically ready. You're not psychologically and spiritually ready, because your context isn't formed. And that's the work that we do on ourselves, is building and bridging the context so that we're ready to hold the fruit that's out there, because it's coming. But are you ready? That's the bigger question. It's not whether the opportunity is there. It's whether you can handle it.
Right. Exactly. Well, I love that. And so I was thinking back on, we're really talking about self-awareness. What do you know about you, and what do you like about you? And what do you need to like better about yourself, right? How do you get through all of that? But I think as children, you hear a lot about being self-absorbed, and self-aware is not the same as being self-absorbed, right?
No, it's not. And part of this, to expand on that too, it's how much do you trust yourself? Because a lot of times this is based on experiences. It's based on going through things. I remember the first time I had a $25,000 check in my hand, and I made it in a 5-minute period. It was very weird and it was uncomfortable. And then after that happened, it was, and I go back to money because we can all relate to money. When that happened, I was like, oh, okay, well, that became normalized. It's like people that make $1 million a year. That's what's normal to them. And so they just act according to that whole way of doing that. Whereas if you've never made $1 million, you've always made 100,000, it's going to be uncomfortable to make the millions. So it's breaking through to new levels of normal. And when you do that, it's like, okay, well, this is just how it is. And that's the push. That's the awareness and the awakening to a different level. It's a different energy level of how you operate. It's like a different operating system. It's like iOS 14 if you're a Mac person. It's like the next thing. Once you go there, you'd never go back to iOS 13. Like you move to the next thing because it's a different level. It's more complex. Maybe it's cleaner, it's clearer, all these different things. And the question is, when are you going to upgrade? Because you have to upgrade if you're going to have the new opportunity, if you're going to have the new software. That's the question. And most people go, I don't want to do that. It's uncomfortable. It's new. It's painful. It's work. Well, I know work is a 4-letter word for a lot of people, but the reality is that's where all the beauty is. It's going through the work, and that self-awareness and self-actualization is the key to happiness, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Now I have to tell you, your next talking point you sent me, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be boring. He's going to start talking about stocks, and he's going to start talking about things that I don't understand. And it's not at all. You're talking about finding the pain. And then you say it, finding the pain and delivering the aspirin. So explain market reality to me.
Well, what people tend to do, especially entrepreneurs, we tend to say, I love this thing, and so I'm going to build something, and I'm going to go deliver it. I'm going to give it to people. And the question we forget to ask is, what's the actual pain, and how do you know? People come to me all the time, and they go, I've got this idea, and I just got pitched this weekend for another thing, and people were talking about the thing, and I go, where's the pain? Like what you have this aspirin you think you're going to give to people, that this market need, and you haven't actually gone out to see if the market even cares. And so it's like people have this idea that they're Steve Jobs, that they can invent something or do something and everybody's going to care. Look, we're not all Steve Jobs. Very few people in the world will ever be Steve Jobs-ish. There's one and only. And so finding where people's pain is and then solving it, sometimes it's different from what you think it is, but you have to be willing to ask and be humble. And that's the key. I mean, truly, there's $1 billion opportunity with anything from pencils to penicillin, if you're willing to go out there and look for the actual problem. And it's not far on a different continent. It's literally in your backyard. Just look around. Where are people struggling? It's probably struggles you have. And the funny thing is, people are like, no, it's this thing because I saw it on TV. Not necessarily. Like, what are people having a hard time with? And there's opportunity sitting right in front of you.
Right. Well, I say to people ask me what I sell, and I sell time. Yes, I sell marketing, but I really sell time, because a lot of what I do, you could do. I mean, yes, I've got more knowledge, I've got more, more of all of that, but all of it boils down to, I have studied it, I have learned it, I have found the way. So that took time, but doing the work also takes time. So I sell time. I make a small business owner's life easier because I'm giving them back time, right? That's the pain that I am, because we don't, as small business owners, for crying out loud, I don't even have the time to do my own. I'd hire somebody inside our business just to handle my own digital marketing, because I wouldn't take the time for myself. So.
You're satisfying a basic human need of certainty. There are these, and I talk about this in one of my books, Reinvented Life, for the 6 basic human needs. A couple of them are certainty and variety, and there's also significance and contribution. And if you look and you think about all the things that we do, that we spend money on, that we spend time on, we're satisfying one of those needs. So a pain point is one of those needs not being met 100% of the time. So when you're like, well, I don't know, I don't get it. Well, when somebody buys a program, they buy something that is going to make them money, like being an Amazon author or something. They're buying that because they want the certainty of the income. If people go to an event, they want the significance of connecting with somebody. Like you just think about it, those basic human needs that's what's being met. Every time something is sold, every time something is bought, it's because we want to fill one of those needs. We don't buy things because we hate our money, unless we're crazy. We're buying it to satisfy a need.
Yeah, I just had a conversation with a guy the other day. He sells home automation. And he said to me, it's really hard to sell. He says, I always sold this other product, and it was so easy because everybody needed it. And this is not something that people need. And I thought, yeah, it is, because home automation for me, my home's, not completely smart yet because we just moved in, but the fact that I can check and make sure my garage door is closed when I'm at the office, because I'm like, oh my gosh, did I do it? And it's given me that security. The fact that I can make sure my alarm system is set, all of these things, I can look around and see what's happening in my house. Those things give me security. It's not just a want. It is even though for this guy, it seemed to him like he wasn't selling something that mattered. But I'm like, no, that's an absolute need. It's really important to examine that. What are you selling? So
Yeah, and not and it's like the thing versus the experience. Like people get stuck in that because they're trying to sell the thing. Nobody cares about the thing. They care about what it's doing for them. And it's what you're saying. It's that security, it's that certainty, this little blue light that says everything is locked up at night. That's what you're selling. You're not selling something moving a doorknob or locking a door. And so that's the question. What do you actually, what's the outcome, the benefit for somebody? And that's, I mean, it's one of the prime things with selling anything. What's the benefit?
right, exactly. All right, so I need to ask you this. Which numbers, how do we know we're succeeding? How do we know we're doing okay? So which numbers do we measure?
That's like the magic question. The numbers, the truth, like if you're looking at wealth, what the ultimate number is the time. Do you have any time, or are you getting to a place? Are you paying a price now in time to have unlimited time down the road? And so the numbers that we need to measure, there's two things. One, do you have any time in your life? Or are you just spinning in a circle? And then ultimately, the financials tell a story. They tell a story about your decisions, and it comes down to the values, but. What numbers do we measure? You measure the top line, you measure the bottom line. A lot of businesses make a mistake saying, "Hey, we're a $6 million company or we're a $600,000 company." What they're not doing is actually looking at the bottom line and seeing, okay, what are we actually taking home? Where's the cash? And why? Because the top line is an ego number. We like to talk about the big numbers, and oftentimes, like I remember joining EO, an entrepreneurs organization. I had a company at the time that was making, it was a couple $1 million a year in revenue, but the margin was like 2%. So I was starving to death, sleeping in my car. I mean, that was what do I want to talk about? The top line or the bottom line? And we can just bleed our companies because we don't understand where the money is flowing. We see it coming in, but then it's not going like where's it actually going after that? And we're not paying attention. And like you said, you mentioned stocks. Do I want to talk about stocks or these things? People tend to be afraid of the numbers, and usually it's because we don't have an innate intelligence, or we don't love numbers. I happen to love them. The truth is you just want to have somebody else doing it, even if you do love them, because it forces accountability for somebody to show up and say, here's what they are. Here's reality. You can't argue with numbers. Our numbers don't lie. And we don't really want to look at the numbers because we'd rather tell ourselves a story. So having a bookkeeper, having somebody giving you that intelligence and saying, here's what's really happening. And then you have to make hard decisions. Like sometimes it's, this business isn't working. Sometimes it's shut it down. Sometimes it's, you know what? I need to fire these 80% of these customers. It gives you intelligence to make decisions versus working from your gut, which means you gave up thinking. That's what gut stands for. You totally gave up thinking when you're not looking at the numbers. So you have to be willing to look at the numbers with somebody else giving you feedback. It's too hard to look at your stuff because you're too close to your thing. And so people will often say, well, I don't have the money, or I'm not big enough. I don't care if you have one customer or you're starting out. You know how much a bookkeeper costs? Less than $100 a month. It is one of the smartest things you can do. And then you expand it as you go. You got to have that, or you're just shooting in the wind.
Yeah. You're saying this, and I just had this conversation yesterday because we let this guy go. And then I called Anastasia and I said, the truth is that there is something I'm not measuring that I know I need to measure. And when I do measure it, I know I'm going to have to let some clients go because I'm not making any money off of them. And I may actually be losing money on them. But it was because I really like that big number that I see. I like the big number that says that I'm bringing in the money. But how much am I spending on these particular clients? What am I doing? How much are they pushing me? And it's hard. It's hard. That idea of letting them go is very, very hard.
Yeah, we tend to, our emotions take over. And this is where having a board of advisors or board of directors or a mentor, not just your friend, your cousin, your spouse, your team members that are going to rah you on and sometimes tell you what you want to hear. Like, it's really important to have outside people that have one job, not to sell you anything other than the truth, just to tell you the truth and give you feedback. One of the most valuable things that you can do is find a pain point in the amount of money you pay a mentor, meaning it makes you uncomfortable. It's like, okay, I'm going to pay this person. I'll give you an example. I had somebody come to me and he said, I want you to mentor me. And I said, all right, well, tell me about that. And ultimately he said, okay, so how much do you charge? And I said, it depends. And he said, well, on what? I said, on how much you're going to pay attention. So he made a certain amount of money. And I said, here's what it costs. And it wasn't so, I pick a number because I want him to pay attention. I want him to actually take action because I don't want to waste my time. There's no amount of money that I can charge somebody that would make any sense if they weren't going to do it. I'd rather just not. I'd rather have my time to hang out in my garden. And so if you're going to hire somebody that's going to give you feedback as a mentor, somebody that's wiser than you, make sure you're paying enough to pay attention. If it's free, you're not going to do anything with it in all likelihood, because it's not like, oh, I got to do something. Like, this is costing me a lot of dang money. We tend to be emotional about our money. And so what you pay for, you pay attention to.
Oh, yeah. So I have a great example of this, and I'm just going to spill the beans. I told you, completely authentic. So I have gained a ridiculous amount of weight, not just during COVID, but really over the past 10 years, really. So I did Ironman in 2012. We're coming up on, I guess, 8 years now. But I've gained a lot of weight, and I keep trying to lose it, And 2 weeks ago, I hired Narit Roddy and said, take my money. And she said, what changed your mind? I'm like, it's not that you're going to do anything that's different than what I know I need to do. But now I'm paying you. And if I don't do it, I've just lost that money. I've just thrown that money in the trash. And my husband said that to me this morning. He says, you're doing really well. What happened? And I said, it's the fact that I paid her. And now I feel like I have to stay on top of it. So it's really, it matters all the way across your life. That is a really good thing to do.
Yeah. It's really interesting whenever I hear somebody hesitating about hiring a coach or somebody that's going to help them, I look at them and I go, they'll say, well, I'm not sure if this person's going to do if they're good enough or it's worth the money. And what they're always saying is, I'm not sure if I'm committed to actually doing the work 100% of the time. Right. Because even if you have an imbecile that's coaching you, the fact that you've got somebody that's watching you is going to make you do something different if you're committed. But if you're not committed, it doesn't make any difference. And so I always laugh when people go, wow, I'm not really sure. I mean, I had one mentor that I spent $400,000 on over 2 years. That's almost Tony Robbins level, his $1 million a year. And you know what? I took unbelievable action, because every time I talked to him, it was $10,000, like for half an hour. It's $10,000. You want to talk about getting your butt in gear and moving? I was like, I don't have time to be messing around. This is $10,000. It was like $400 a minute. That is a different level of focus.
Exactly. No, it absolutely makes a difference. I have to tell you, you have done something that nobody else has made me do. I have 2 banners for our next subject, and I couldn't decide, because you said undercapitalizing, but the second part of that was reality versus hopium. So I want you to explain. I'm going to keep this one up because, quite honestly, this was my favorite. I just think hopium is awesome. So tell me about it.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Everybody's smoking hopium, that like, it's a great idea. We're just going to hope away. And you're literally smoking hopium. That's your plan. And this is a lot of how people invest, or they run businesses based on hopium. I'm like, why are you smoking hopium? How about reality? Well, reality is kind of subjective. We just make it up. And this is where having other people around and saying, okay, maybe there's a different way. And a great example of that is people that throw money into the stock market, and they give it to a financial advisor and they go, I don't really understand this stuff. I'm just going to hand it off and hope. That is people's strategy. And then they wake up 40 years down the road. I had a great example, really successful orthopedic surgeon that is a client, and he was looking at his 401k, and he and a buddy became clients. And he looked at it and they said, wow, over the last 30 years, when you actually look at reality, we had a 2% compounded rate. And the rest was just eaten up in fees. And we'd had, a massive bull market in the 2000s and 2000 teens. And it was reality versus them just smoking hopium. And these are smart people. And most of us are doing the same thing. We're smoking hopium, hoping it'll work out. The alternative is you say, okay, reality is I need to understand and take responsibility. I'm not going to abdicate responsibility. That's what handing money off and just hoping is. Hopium is abdicating responsibility. It's a victim play. You go, oh, well, market did this. Different plan if you actually want to design a future versus having it by default.
Absolutely. Yes, I cannot agree with you more. And it's something that we see a lot. It's really what we see in our marketing, right? People come to us and they say, here, do our social media. And then they'll say, it didn't work. And I'm like, and they're like, I didn't get anything. And I'm like, okay, I sent you this week, we're talking about some small places, but I'll say, I sent you 20 things this week where people said, I want to sign up. How do I do that? Did you get any of them? Oh, I didn't call them. So what did you think was going to happen? Did you think they were automatically? You don't have an automatic system. So what did you think was going to happen? You have to be ready to take that next step. You can't just hand something off to somebody. And I'm not the only one. I just talked to I was on a show yesterday with 2 other marketing agencies, and they both said, oh my gosh, the number of times that's happened is just unbelievable. People want to just hand it off, and hopium is a great word for it.
It's really fascinating what we expect to happen by default. The problem is too many people have been running by The Secret, the movie The Secret, where if you will it, it'll happen. Let me tell you, everybody, it's not going to be that you will a bag of money to fall on your head from the sky. Like, that doesn't happen. The bag of money is right in front of you, but you got to go to it. And there's this misnomer that it's just going to come to you. Like, if you leave the door open, all the riches are just going to come in because you've willed them. That's not how it works. You got to be willing to do the work. I remember back in the beginning of my real estate investing days 2 decades ago, I wasn't doing the work of calling people back. And so I bought my first couple of houses and I was all excited and I was doing work on the houses and that was the fun part, but I was an amateur. I wasn't actually returning phone calls for people that were saying, I want to buy your thing. And it was fascinating because I played a game by Robert Kiyosaki called Cash Flow. And I thought, maybe I should do a financial statement on myself. And I did it. And I realized I was 30 days away from bankruptcy. And all of a sudden, I got my butt into gear because the potential for pain was so intense. I went out there. Not only did I get rid of those 3 houses and leased them out, I bought 8 more over the next 30 days and literally became a millionaire inside of a month. Like, it was so crazy because of that action. And people go, that's like, how did that happen? It's because my context changed. The context forced the action because I just got very, very present and very real because I was looking at the numbers and I was taking action based on reality. It wasn't just, oh, I hope it'll all work out. I'm going to continue painting and doing yard work and it's all going to be good. Like, I look at people and I go, your life is your own damn fault. Just like Larry Wingett said it in his book. It is your fault. So you can also do something about it when you take responsibility, because if you don't take responsibility, you can't do crap about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I cannot, I was writing down Larry Wingett because I'm going to put that in the show notes so people can go and listen to it. I also, if you can send me over when we're done, you've written several books. Can you tell me what they are so we can tell everybody here?
Yeah, I mean, the books that really matter, I think, especially right now, are Reinvented Life and Unicornomics. There's a bunch of books. You can see them all at DamionLupo.com. The Reinvented Life book is really important because right now there's a lot of reinventing going on. People are trying to figure out what end is up. Real estate's changing, business is changing. We're working from home. 40 million people aren't working at all. Like, there's a lot of disruption, and so we have to be willing to reinvent. And regardless of pandemic or no pandemic, there's always an opportunity for us to reinvent if we're willing to do the work. Reinvention is a process that I did when I lost all this money and I went, okay, now what? Like, what am I supposed to be? Or who am I? Or all these things. The book goes into the questions. It's the story. It's very personal. It also asks the questions so you can figure out how to reinvent your own life. You can also get a copy of the workbook with all those questions on my site. And then Unicornomics came out last year, and it was really after starting 50 companies. It was the foundational 15%. If you get that first 15% right in starting a company, you have an 85% likelihood of that company working, assuming the market actually wants or cares about your thing. And that was, it's a small book. It's called a mini book, and you can read the book in 30 minutes. And it's really powerful to get that foundation. I'm thinking, okay, what would I have really loved to have had 20 years ago starting out? And it was this book. So I wrote this book for me 20 years ago. So whether you're starting or you've had 30 companies, there's going to be stuff in here and you're going to go, oh, because if you're not an entrepreneur in some sort, most likely you're in trouble if you're not doing something entrepreneurial. You're never really going to be free. And we all have an inner entrepreneur in us. Yes. Rare exception that people don't have something that they could do to serve other people. And that's what it is to be an entrepreneur.
Right. No, I love that. We did, if you go back to how I started this company, people will say to me, I just had it happen a couple of days ago. They're like, he was asking me all these questions about, we were trying to get to know each other. And he's asking me, so what networks do you belong to? And what businesses do you do? And he started all these questions and he's like, wait, but you did all of this in 4 years. And I looked at it. And at first I was like patting myself on the back. And then I was like, no, not really. No, it starts for me. All of this started 10 years ago. All of it started, even though it was 4 years, the very first seed was planted 10 years ago where I had the idea. And then I did all these different steps that led me there. And some of them I didn't even know were steps that were leading me here. But you've got to stop comparing yourself to other people and seeing where they are and thinking, oh, that's where I'm going to be, in 4 years, because it wasn't.
No, that people look at these highlight reels on whether it's Facebook or these different social media channels, and they say, "Oh, my life doesn't look like that." And well, yeah, I mean, it's like looking at Justin Bieber and saying overnight success story. He made hundreds of millions of dollars when he was 17 or something. He started when he was 4, so he'd already been doing it for a decade plus. And so we miss all the hard work. We miss the anonymity of all of the struggle when we're basically broke and we're working for nothing. And that's the part that people don't want to see. They just want to look at the end product and say, "Oh, how do I hopscotch over there?" The problem is too many people have read the 4-Hour Work Week, and we say, "Oh, it's so easy." Yeah, that's easy, but guess what? There's somebody next to you that's competing with you that's working 10 hours or 100 hours a week, like Gary Vee talks about. And the reality is, you got to be willing to do the work. I keep coming back to this with people because the work is what sets you free, and it's not that you work yourself to death. It's that you work yourself to the point of breaking your shackles. And it's not just the work you're doing externally, it's the work you're doing internally, starting with the questions you ask yourself and the truth that you get to. And that's how this works. And if you don't do that stuff, you're never going to be free.
Absolutely. This has been so much fun. And I have to tell you, I don't talk to you ahead of time. I don't get anything ahead of time because I like the idea that I'm getting to know you and our audience is getting to know you. I'm learning about you, and our audience is learning about you all at the same time. That's really a great thing. I think you've given great information today. I really appreciate it. I did do this though, and we had a technical difficulty. You and I, we had my computer crashed, and you couldn't hear us, and all kinds of things happened. So I had put Financial Underdogs here, financialunderdogs.com. But what is the other website people can find you at?
DamionLupo.com is where you can visit. You can see my books, and you can see the commentary. You get a copy of the Reinvented Life workbook at DamionLupo.com. It'll allow you to ask some questions. It's always fascinating to me seeing somebody that reads a book and I go, "How'd you do with the work?" And like, there are a lot of books have great questions. They have great activities, and people just read through them like they're a Harry Potter novel. This is not Harry Potter. This is called a life-changing event if you want it to be that by doing the work. And so just, skip to the work. Go to the meat. The meat is inside you. Like, there's a great documentary called "I Am Not Your Guru" that Tony Robbins did, or he was part of. You don't need somebody else. Trust me, you've got it inside you if you know what questions to ask. And so this is my way to help you get to those questions. Just download that workbook, and I think it'll help you a great deal in figuring out your truth.
That's great. I hear people say that they read books before. Well, I read books before I go to bed, but I read fiction before I go to bed. But they'll tell me, "Oh, I'm reading a business book before I go to bed." And I think, how are you doing that? Because if I'm reading a business book, I'm taking notes. I've got other things happening. You know what I mean? So I always wonder the same thing. Are you just hoping it's like that? Have you seen the video with the kid? It's the most adorable video where he's scooping up the knowledge off of the page and he puts it into his head. He just keeps scooping it up and putting it into his head. It's like that. Is that what you think is going to happen?
I think people do think that's what's going to happen. Or if they, one of the things, I've got a bunch of books behind me on a bookshelf. And a lot of times, like most people, Larry Wingate again was talking about one of his books. And he said, it was interesting because somebody called me one time and they said, "Hey, how come you have like 30 pages that are blank in the back of your book?" And he goes, "I didn't even know that was true. I've sold 10 or 20,000 copies, but I've never heard that." And it dawned on him that most people that bought his book weren't actually reading it. And so if you think that you can buy a book or get some material, buy a course and just have it sit there and it's going to osmotically mesh into your brain, you're wrong. You got to open the damn thing and do the work. And it's like, a lot of people just go, "If I have this stuff, then I'm smarter." I'm like, no, you're not. You're dumber and you're broker.
Right. Exactly. All right. Thank you very much for coming on. Don't go away. I'm going to keep you here for a few minutes. I want to talk about what's coming up next. I'm really excited. Monday, I have Alex Fakeri, and he doesn't even know this. I'm going to tell you, Alex, I do know. He owns Mojo over in Pasadena, Maryland. And when I started, people would say, "Oh, you do what Alex does." And I would say, "Oh, well, yeah, sort of, but on like a really little level, a little tiny level, I do it." And now, my company's building and his company's building, but we're getting closer. So we've been doing a lot of things together. I'm excited about having him come on because he's going to talk about a similar idea with Damion, what people think they know and what they don't really know. So we're going to talk about that on Monday. I'm very excited about that. Want to remind you again, if you're listening to this, please subscribe. If you are watching it on Facebook or Twitter, please do me a favor and go over to YouTube and subscribe there, because boy, do I need some subscribers over there. That would help me out a lot. If you need help with your digital marketing, we are here. We want to help you. We do consultations, but we also do the full, you give it to us, we do the work, we send you what you need to know from there. So that's at asmmdigital.com. I hope that you guys will tune in Monday. I hope you'll subscribe. And I hope you'll let me know what you're getting from this, what you're learning, what your favorite part of each episode is. That's very, very helpful to us. All right, Damion, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Ann. Appreciate you having me. Thanks,
All
everybody.
right. Bye-bye.